And before we get started, I would like to share a little bit more about Emerge. Emerge is for those of you that are new, Emerge is an employee-led resource group. And one of the missions of Emerge is to advance a cultural inclusion for the university's next generation of leaders. There are two things that are about to happen in 2020. In 2020, our workforce is going to change. We're going to have 5 generations working together to work wonders. 2020, we are going to welcome Generation Z to the workforce. Also, in 2020, we are at UTMB, we're going to have about 20% of our employees are going to be eligible to retire. So one of the things that we're doing with this resource group is preparing the next generation of leaders, providing the skills, the tools available, so that when that opportunity arrives, you are ready. So welcome again to the resource group. And at this moment, I would like to introduce our executive sponsor, Dr. Alexander Bowe, to welcome our speaker.
Well, this is a unique event, but before I start, I'd like to recognize a few people who are the co-founders of Emerge. Emilda, Christine, Michael, Gina, Catherine, Leah, and Jade. So please give everybody a great hand of applause inside the back. And volunteers their time and services. These are the emerging servant leaders, as you can see out there. And we want you guys to be a part of all this. We're pretty excited. This is the last talk of the year. This was set up to be a TED Talk-like situation. And we want to actually have 4 main themes this year. So we're wrapping up the last theme with a great speaker that I've known for a while, and she's pretty amazing. Lily Bragg is a compulsive problem solver. I was going to say problem generator, but no. She solves problem too. It's a serial but reluctant entrepreneur. She's had a great career path. She's never stopped asking the why questions that plagues parents and toddlers. With an insatiable curiosity, she trash and thrash until she discovers answers to questions like, what do I want to do with my life, and how can I feed my career and my heart, and all those things. At her core, she is a systems thinker and enjoys noodling on upstream, downstream rogue implication of her work. She loves rolling up her sleeves, I know that for sure, on complex and gross organizational challenges. Her resume includes working for and with companies like Microsoft, Merck, HP, IBM, Humana, and nonprofits in faraway places. And she's traveled to nearly 40 countries, with working in 7 of them, and dabble in a diversity of subjects and listening with compassion. She has learned that learning happens where and when you choose. So with that, please welcome Lily Bragg.
Thank you, Alex. As Alex mentioned, I am a compulsive problem solver. This is true. Right now, I am living in Denver, and I'm working with a company called Burst IQ. Burst IQ is creating a health data platform that is secure and that holds on to all of your information, allows you to share it with whomever, whenever. I also we'll go with March. But it really started back in the end of January. Started a new company, and that company is called Vouch. And so I have gone from working for big companies and working as a consultant to enormous companies to becoming a reluctant entrepreneur. Somebody who is really compelled towards the problem and figuring out the solutions, and I'm putting that first. So that's what I'm working on right now. What I wanted to spend today talking about is learning, specifically innovation and learning, but mostly learning. And the most important thing that I hope that you get out of this conversation is not just the stuff that I'm going to share that I've done and been through in my life, but I really hope that this conversation starts a dialogue of learning within the room, and then that extends outside of the room as well. Because learning from each other is one of the most important things that I think that we can do in this life. And so let us be proactive in doing that. I'm going to be going from behind here and apparently dealing with a software update. Going from behind here to in front, as I'm not going to try at this moment to get the mouse to work, but we'll figure it out. So the first thing that I wanted to do was, well, before we get into the polls, this picture, and I'm going to be showing you a bunch of pictures over the course of this conversation, is from, we call this right here. If you look closely enough, it kind of looks like a face, or it kind of looks like Pride Rock from The Lion King. So this was the view that I had for almost a year in a small village called Nano. Nano is in western Malawi, near to Mozambique. So geography of southern Africa. From your orientation, you have South Africa down here. You have Namibia on this side, and on this side you have Mozambique. So Madagascar is the big island that's over here, and a sliver of a country, just a little bit of a snake. You can barely even see it until you zoom in on a map. That's where you have Malawi. And Mozambique comes up and around the bottom side, and so Malawi is sandwiched in between. So this picture is from the porch where I lived for a while working, and I'll go into more of that in a little bit. So in order to start to get some context from everybody in this room about where we are individually, I'd like everyone to pull out their phones. And I'm going to start going through a few different poll questions. We're going to go back to these poll questions periodically. So go ahead and grab a text message window, and I'll give you the time to be able to do this. And in your text message window, in the who am I going to text a message to, type in the numbers 22333. And then the message that you're going to send to 22333 is my first name, last initial, LILYB. Hit send, and you're going to get a confirmation text message back. I'll give everyone a couple of seconds to do that. So after you've gotten that text message back, you basically just entered into the polling environment. So we'll take this as, if you haven't done poll everywhere, this is learning number 1. So how many gigs have you had? I'm saying jobs. That could be, you can take it however you want to. Really, this is just to get a pulse. Think of it more like, how many times have you made a change in what you're doing? Be it the scope of your responsibilities, be it your employer, whatever you want that categorization to be. So I'll give people a little bit more time to weigh in. So I guess technically I've only had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 employers, but I've had lots of different things in the interim. Great, this is good. This is good so far. So nobody in the room. Oh, there we go. Yes, yes. We have 1 in the 1 spot. And we'll see this continue to evolve. So I wanted to get this up here to give a sense of how much movement there is in people's jobs and careers these days. It didn't really used to be this way. And with the emergence of things like the gig economies, the Ubers, the Rovers, which if you don't know Rover, I just got a dog, and it's the savingest thing in my entire life. I can leave my dog with a wonderful family. She doesn't have to get crated or boarded. But they allow you to, so Rover is like care.com for dogs. You can allow people to make a little bit extra money on the side by taking care of someone's dog for a couple of days. Or you can just have a dog walker. But Uber, Airbnb, Lyft, all of these things allow for people to have multiple different hats that they're wearing simultaneously. And so how do we juggle all of those things? So a lot of this group has had lots of different things going on. And so I've had similar experiences where I've had lots of different jobs. And what I want to find out next from people is, are you doing what you'd expect you'd be doing right now? When you graduated from college or when you were a kid, are you right now doing the thing that you, so not even close. Yeah, are you doing that thing that you really thought of? So as we talk, hold on to what that thing was that you thought that you'd be doing, right? Because there is an important role that that had in your life. Why, right? Why was that so important? Is there any way that you can get back to that in some capacity? How can you, I'm not talking about professionally. I'm not saying, oh, you wanted to be a fireman, so quit the day job and go learn to be a fireman. I'm just saying, what were those things as a part of being a fireman that were really intriguing to you, and how can you go back to that a little bit? Now, the last question that I wanted to find out from people is, do you feel like you're constantly learning? Personally, professionally, you name it. I really enjoy that somebody was honest enough to say not at all. That's great. And that's okay, right? There are moments in our lives where we just can't take any more. So that's all so that we can get a little bit of a level set on, let's see if I can get this done, good. So that we can get a little bit of a level set on who's in the room and where we all are together. So in 2014, I returned from an international stint, we'll call it. And I had this incredible, we'll say, opportunity to think about my career and my life in its totality. You know, I was a whopping 34 years old, 38 now. And I was thinking, what do I want to do next? Right? What had gotten me to that point in my life and my career, and what exactly did I want to do in my next steps? I really had no idea, but it gave me this really interesting moment to stop the thrashing, just to have a moment of pause and think, what now? Right? I've just had all of this diversity of experience, and what now? And the thing about me, and I'm going to go into more of this in a second, is I had done so many different kinds of things that if I had that intro conversation with someone of, so what are you doing? And, oh, what did you do before that? To the random observer, they would literally have no idea what the one had to do with the other. No clue, none. And I couldn't blame them because I was terrible at articulating what the thread was that connected all of those different pieces. So I took a significant amount of time because I realized I wasn't truly aware of why I was jumping from different things. And so I did this wild and crazy thing. I had been working for Microsoft. And so I had drunk the Microsoft Kool-Aid in proper form. And I said, you know what, I'm going to skip the PowerPoint thing, and I'm going to use this new tool called Prezi. So I forced myself to sit down for really a solid 3 days to figure out, you know, how do I reimagine my resume, right? And how do I do that so that it articulates what the story is that doesn't come across when you just hand someone a piece of paper that's supposed to reflect the X years of your life that you've lived and the X years that you've worked. So I did this thing in Prezi. And this is, I haven't touched it since then. I looked at it in advance of this conversation. So this is raw, what it was. And I basically reimagined what my resume would be with narration. So think about me at that moment. I'm like, what do I want to do for my next job? I've just been living in Africa and India. I had been doing big professional career stuff before that, but what now? Do I want to go and work for water companies, clean water organizations? Do I want to work in healthcare? Do I want to go take the job that my old boss offered me doing business process outsourcing for big companies? All very, very different kinds of options. You know, an offer from a hedge fund, what? It was very much this moment of where am I going next with my life? And so I created this Prezi, and I'll kind of talk you through it and take some pauses. But ultimately, it was a 4-minute thing that I could throw up on YouTube and share with someone and customize a little bit for, hey guys, this is what I'm about. So you know, the standard, this is who I am on the top. So as it begins, and there's audio. I turned it off for all of our benefit, but there's audio that accompanies this. So this basically takes my entire career path, until that point in time, and gives you a broad brush of, okay, well, I graduated from college. I went to Hamilton, upstate New York. I worked for a place called MarketBridge consulting firm. Then I worked for Microsoft for a bit. Then I was doing some aid work. And then this, in the future, I might be doing other things. And so what did I do at Hamilton? Like, why is this important? What are the pertinent things here? So Hamilton was a small school. I didn't even look at schools that were over 2,000 kids. That was terrifying to me. I studied English literature. I wanted to be a chemistry major, but I also wanted to go to Paris, and I couldn't actually do both. They wouldn't let me. And so I said, well, peace, I'm still going to France, so I guess I'm not going to be a chemistry major. What I had gone into college to do was to become a doctor. I had gone in thinking that I was pre-med. Unfortunately, in my freshman year, I was in a god-awful car accident. A car accident that completely changed my life. I was a 3-season athlete in high school. I was planning on being a 2-season athlete in college. I specifically picked only D3 schools such that I could play 2 sports. Field hockey and lacrosse. Swimming was the other one. Swimming in college is, well, if you were a swimmer, I bow my hat to you. So I decided, after spending a significant amount of time in the medical process myself as a patient, going in and out of all of those doctors' offices, I wanted to have nothing to do with it. That I did not see myself becoming a doctor, that was just going to be too, it was not gonna lead me to my happy place. I did not want to be only a diagnostician. I wanted to engage more. So I thought, maybe I'll do PT, in and out of all of these different thought processes of, do I stay in the clinical side, do I do that, or do I do something different? And ultimately, I said, I'm going to go do Peace Corps, except for the fact that I couldn't do Peace Corps because I had to have a pretty significant surgery after I graduated from college, which kicked me out of the entire loop. So Peace Corps, Fulbright, all of those different things where you have to start in September and August, I couldn't do those. So it was this, and they wouldn't just say, oh, sure, you can start in January. That's okay, we'll hold it for you. So I had this, oh boy. So I ended up getting this job working in consulting. Fortunately, I got the job, didn't tell them that I was going to have to start a little bit later, and then negotiate with them on my start date. Ultimately, they said, you don't get the job, go find another job, and then maybe we'll talk. So I found another job, and then ultimately got the job that I had wanted, which was working for MarketBridge. So MarketBridge, very small consultancy, very big customers that we were working for. So I moved to DC after school in upstate. I was solving problems. I was focused on in the after hours, which we're talking about, 80, 100-hour weeks. So those were hard to find. But I was coaching lacrosse. I was doing things to give back. I was really trying to recover from my back surgery still. I was given an opportunity in about 2005 to move to either San Francisco, London, or Paris and help in different ways. I decided to go to San Francisco and open up this new business line that we were starting on marketing services. That was pretty cool. My mother was diagnosed with cancer in 2006, and so boom, 2007, after way too much travel, I said, let me go back home. That's the most important thing, is to be with my family. So I did that, and all the while during my time at MarketBridge, I had been, probably starting in 2005, I had been doing consulting work for Microsoft as a part of MarketBridge. And so Microsoft eventually said, after I quit MarketBridge, I said, this is of course right after Lehman fell, not the smartest of choices to quit. But I did it anyway. I said, I'm going to move to Hawaii, and I'm going to become a surfer and a massage therapist. Yeah. So I made that phone call to my boss at the time, and he hung up. He was like, no, you're not. Clearly this is a joke. Clearly you're not actually, because I'm the hard worker, the one who always manages to figure out how to solve the problems, like work with the gnarly business process issues that are happening. I was doing complex financial models, deploying teleservices teams, all this different stuff, and they're like, you're quitting to go surf? What? So I I really was intending to do that. And in January of 2009, Microsoft had been pushing me pretty hard for probably about 2 months then to actually come on board and work for them to implement something that I had been doing as a consultant. I had worked with them and their senior leadership to change the way marketing happens. Won't go into the details. They said, come and implement it, right? None of this just the designing it thing. Come and actually do it. So I came and actually did it, and then I ended up having to do a lot of other changes, because when you say that these roles change and this team needs to be responsible for these things, then you also need to change who gets the money to do those things. So we ended up changing a lot of the fiscal planning processes and allocation of money processes. In the process, and as a part of my negotiation of going to Microsoft, I said, cool, I'm on board, here's my list of stuff. Right, I negotiated. I said, I'm only coming if you guys will let me go to grad school to do something that's absolutely not related to what I am supposed to be doing at Microsoft, and will support me to go join the health team within Microsoft. And so they said, okay. I was like, and you're going to give me those days off too, right? And you're going to pay for a good chunk, if not all of it, right? And they said, yep, okay. So I decided that I was going to do the craziest of crazies and do full-time school for 2 years and full-time work for that same period of time. That was a little maddening. In that same window, as I was learning about what it is to work with hospitals, what it is to work in humongous organizations, I thought I wanted to be a hospital COO, and I was fortunate enough to be in an executive MBA program, so all of my peers were doctors or administrators themselves. And I decided that's not what I wanted to do. I did not want to go down the COO path. So what next? I was working with a guy I had found through Microsoft and started working with him intensely as his essentially chief of staff. At that time, that was when Windows Phone actually existed as a product. And Microsoft brought five different organizations together to form that Windows Phone team. I was working on that team. I said to my boss, got this awesome opportunity to go and live in Malawi for a little bit. Can I just go do that for like leave of absence? I'd only been at Microsoft at this point for like 3 years, and that's not standard. You usually have to be at Microsoft for about 10 years in order to get a 6-month leave of absence. He needed something from me though, and I wanted to go away. So we negotiated a deal where I helped him stabilize a couple of organizations that he was leading. And I, in turn, was then, after we stabilized those, able to take a year-long leave of absence. So my intent was to go to Malawi and work with Partners in Health. Does anybody here know what Doctors Without Borders is? I'm getting a whole bunch of nods. Okay, so Partners in Health is very similar to Doctors Without Borders in that they help in these very rural areas. Big differences from a philosophical standpoint. Doctors Without Borders is premised on helping in refugee populations for fixed period of times where those refugee populations are existing. Partners in Health's approach is more, let's go into these rural communities, e.g. Nano, Malawi, and stay there, and help do capacity building and help to build the facility within that community using the ministries of health. So they don't stand up their entire procurement processes as separate from the existing processes within the ministry. They have small ones, but it's not the same. MSF brings all of their equipment and all of their supplies, and they have rigorous process, operational rigor that they stand up, make sure that they can execute and move forward. Partners in Health is much slower about that because they're trying to train the people on the ground. So in Partners in Health, whoopsie daisy. In Partners in Health, I was in Nano, and the intent was to help them with business operations and make sure that health outcomes were better. I really went in order to help them with their electronic medical records, because there is an electronic medical record that they're using there. It's called OpenMRS. And in the end, I needed to help with some other way larger issues that they were having from an organizational standpoint. Most people who go, and really what I was doing, didn't really tell Microsoft this at the time, was I was trying to figure out, do I want to change my entire career? Like, do I want to go and become a program manager or a country director and do 2-year stints, 3-year stints in these faraway places? Do I want to go and change my entire life from being based in America to being based in a backpack? And after my almost 1.5 to 2 years of living and working in these different contexts, I decided the answer is no. So I went to this organization in India called Reimagining, which I learned of through a Facebook video of all things, because I had a lot of respect, I still do, for an organization called Charity Water. Charity Water does clean water and sanitation stuff. Partners in Health does mostly corporeal health issues. So Graham Vickers, I emailed the executive director. I said, hey, can I come and help in some capacity? Let's figure this thing out. And so I was there for quite some time, and I'm still in contact with them and helping where I can. The Graham Vickers thing, there was this woman in the hospital. Her name is Rosemary. She and I share a birthday. She was 30 years older than I am, and I went to her home one day with a friend of mine, and we had to walk 5 miles to get there, and we saw how they're living. And this is after having been in Malawi for quite some time. It takes a lot to warm up to the local population, and they were so kind and so wonderful. And what I learned was that she has to walk 2.5 miles with 20 liters of water on her head. I can pick up 20 liters of water. It's not pretty. I certainly cannot put 20 liters on my head, and I certainly cannot walk any distance with 20 liters. She has to do that just to get her water to feed her family, and she works in a hospital, so she knows the importance of clean water. So I went to Malawi, or to Graham Vickers, to this really rural area in eastern India, because I wanted to focus more on the water problem. To me, I was trying to get all these different kinds of experiences to get to the most like empirical truth. What are the things where I can help and have the biggest impact? To me, it's kind of like Partners in Health's motto was, look, they believe in the preferential option of healthcare for the poor. They believe that you cannot have an economy that's thriving until you have people who are healthy enough to work within that economy. And so they say, let's give them healthcare. Let's give them health. Let's provide that to them for free or as close to free as possible in order to be able to allow them to build an economy and then get the flywheel going. Well, to me, after having this experience of this person who I'd known and seen every single day, realized, wait a minute, I don't even know where they go to the bathroom. Where do they get their clean water from? And she told me that they could go to a river just there, but that the water is so dirty that they'd have to boil it. And then in order to boil it, they have to use charcoal. In order to get the charcoal, they have to actually get into a car to get to a place to get the charcoal. In order to buy the charcoal, they need to have money. Whew. I mean, so it's this whole loop. And I mean, we've all heard about these stories of children who are, put into labor too early, and are therefore avoiding education opportunities, or of women who are not able to do other things because they spend so much time making sure that there's food and water for the home. And this was me living it and actually experiencing it. So I went to Graham Vickers to learn more about that, to see how those problems are getting solved from a best-in-class kind of organization. And so then this, I'll just click through, but this is basically, these are things that I think I want to do, right? I want to solve complex problems. I want to learn, question, and always be curious. And I have to create a positive social impact. That hasn't changed much, by the way. I had never documented it, and it was probably always there. But I needed to go through this entire process of what are you doing with your life in order to figure out that thread. And those are the threads, right? If I zoom back out, and I will have to figure out how to do that, yeah. If I zoom back out, the story of my career, when you look at those things in discrete chunks, you're like, how in the world did those transitions happen? And so I ask you, as you think about, especially for the people who are in the +5 jobs, right? Why did you make those choices? Not the tactical, there was a comp package that was better, or I needed to move locations, but why? Why did that next step appeal to you? How can you learn from yourself in that entire process? And to be honest, I hadn't taken the time. I had too much stuff going on. And so when I took that, we'll call it a sidestep from the corporate track and went to Malawi and then to India, I was really digging deep and trying to pursue what those things are that really drive me. And punchline, what I learned, I'm an experiential learner. I need to actually have the thing in front of me. I need to be living through it in order to really believe it, right? I can understand the theoretical, I can read the story and try and get the general gist, but in the end, if I'm going to truly own that, I need to be experiencing it. Tactile, seeing it with my own eyes, smelling everything around me when that's happening. I'm a voracious learner. I have to be learning all of the time. I'm a constant learner. It is not a joke. I am always reading or consuming. And in order to thrive, not just continue to push on with the days, but in order to thrive, I have to be. And my brain is always moving on it. It's always thinking, oh, wow, that's a really cool way in which that person on that bicycle who's crating maybe 300, 400 pounds of stuff has just rigged it so that it can actually move forward and so that the person doesn't have to make multiple trips. So this is what I was doing. And what I want to show you guys is just some of the things from my trip and just a couple stories along the way of things I learned. So I lived in Seattle when I was at Microsoft, and I lived in the houseboats, and I've really had a charmed life. I had this houseboat that had a dock in front of it, and there were cleats so that boats could tether off. And somebody moved a table that they weren't supposed to, and I ran into the lake and kicked the cleat and broke my foot. I'd like to say that I'm a very fast runner, but I don't think it has anything to do with that. I then ended up in a boot for 4 months or something like that, and it actually delayed my entire trip to Africa, which fortunately made it so that my start time was the same start time as the entire board of directors and Paul Farmer, who is the founder of Partners in Health. So I developed a friendship and relationship with all of those guys because I kicked a cleat, right? And so I said in that period of time before I could actually go to Africa, because the doctors were worried about a non-union, I had this little buggy called Scoot Scoot. And Scoot Scoot and I decided, along with my friend Stephanie, that we were going to go to Colombia just for a few days, as in, Cartagena, Colombia, because why not? And what I learned there was, so not all countries have ADA compliance. And so most of the time I was scooting in the street because there was no way for me to scoot on the sidewalks. And just like in Galveston, you have those really high, curbs. Yeah, we had that in Colombia too. Everything was very uneven. And mostly people were just honking at me thinking, what is that crazy blonde chick doing right now? And then I just thought this would be a cool picture. In Nano, one of the things I learned was, and this kid's not got his hands down, but kids in these countries where they actually have to transport water on their head learn from a very young age to walk not with, like us, with your hips that go up and down. They walk with their hips like in a bit of a shimmy going from side to side because they need to keep their head level. Right? And so if you try and train yourself, I made a goal that I was going to walk about the distance of 15 minutes from the market to the house where I was living, carrying a flat of eggs, so 30 eggs in a square on top of my head. And I also wanted to carry a bag of stuff because I'm living there. I should be able to do this, right? Whew. That was harrowing. It was a slow process. I ultimately, of course, did it mostly because I'm entirely too stubborn to fail that badly. So I learned that these kids, they just, because of their surroundings, because that's the way that they need to exist, they need to adapt. Right? And so how can we all continue to adapt and remember that it just takes time and effort? I certainly couldn't carry that flat of eggs on my first day. It literally took me 9 months. And we're talking 9 months of every day trying a little bit more, recognizing how I was physically moving my body at every single step, and also consuming the laughter and reactions from everybody around me who was thinking, who's this crazy white girl? This is right outside of our house. These two kids are kids who they're the children of one of the employees of Partners in Health. We had a spigot outside of our house, which is how we got our water. We had some water in the house as well from taps in the kitchen and bathroom. But sometimes we would lock our water. And we were always very conflicted about it. You can't see it in this image, but just over here, there was something that we had to have rigged to stop people from taking the water, because the next place for them to get it from a well, for the people who lived down the hill from us, was another 6 minutes walking. And they thought, oh, well, why don't we just take it from this house? And so I was living in this house with another 10 people-ish. And there was another building just next to us full of Westerners that was another 8-ish people. And we had to lock our water supply. That's a pretty awful feeling. You're saying this other person who lives in our neighborhood needs to walk a little bit farther with 20 liters on their head, and we're just going to lock ours, because if we didn't, then we had no water. And then we had to go do that. Or more appropriately, we would have had somebody go get it for us. And so figuring out how to grapple with those feelings of haves, have-nots, and who's getting inconvenienced to go do something for something as basic as water, I still, to be honest, am not through learning from that and learning what the implications were. Oh, well, this is good. This was my shower. Sorry. Do you see that stream? That's like ice cold water there. That was, I would have to give myself a pep talk every day. We can do this. We can do this. But it was that, or it was, a cup. And I've got a lot of hair. And so that's what a shower can be like. I'm terrified of heights. And I decided that when I was in Cape Town, I was going to conquer some of my fears and walk off of the side of a mountain. And that smile may have had something to do with a shot of Jameson's just before it. But this is Cape Town down here, and the guy who's behind me, he had children and he loved them. And so I felt confident walking off of the side of a cliff with him. But we cruised around there, and then I did it 2 more times. Once more in Cape Town, and then another time when I was in Himachal, in the Himalayas. This one was good. So what do you do when you're that close to the elephant, right? And what you don't see in this image is that there's a baby right there too. Yeah, you just stand still. You don't run, you don't try and get under the table. There's another picture that I didn't actually get because I was too terrified. There's probably some joke in here, but the hippo that just walked into the restaurant. Yeah, so these are different kinds of things that I needed to see. I needed to see that what happens when wildlife and humanity are put that close together. Let's see. So this is in Botswana. I decided to take this tour. I love the water. I decided to take this tour, and at one point, the driver went over a body of water, and you can spot hippos because there's an ellipse that forms when they're submerged, and you can see a very faint ripple. And as we went over, there's a video of it, as we went over this very vast pool in these marshes, I saw about 6 ellipses. However, I wasn't able to do anything or to really react in time because the speedboat was going that fast. And just after we crossed over the top of this body, I turned around, and all of these hippos are just bounding out of the water because they're pissed. And I was very thankful in that moment that we were, in fact, still in that speedboat chasing away from them. No matter where you are, no matter what you're doing, people will figure out how to have fun and do insane backflips. And talk about innovation, look at this, how this guy's fishing, right? This is in near to Cartagena. This guy's fishing with this huge net. I just found that to be so wonderful. And in South Africa, I learned what happens when a turtle crosses the road, and a couple of us were at dinner last night, and my dog brought to me in New York a month ago, I heard an unfamiliar thunk in the entryway, like off of the deck. And I didn't know what it was, and sure enough, my puppy had found a turtle somewhere and brought it into the house. Turtle's fine. Turtle got rescued and put back into the wild. And this is just how close I was able to get to some really insane creatures. So what I want to ask you is, what do you want to do with your life? If you think about all these different pictures, all these images, and the things I've seen for innovation, what do you think that you want to learn next, right? Let me see if I can. When you were younger, let's start there, right? What did you want to do? Let's get that up. Let's go ahead and do another text. And for this one, it's going to form into a word cloud. So actually type that thing. It can be, I wanted to be a fireman. It can be, I wanted to jump off of the side of a mountain. It can be, I wanted to, see a lion up close and personal. Whatever those things are. Because those are the things I think really help to drive us in the end. Yes. And it can be whole sentences, if you like. Oh, this makes sense that wanted is popping. Everyone is typing in I wanted to be, and so it's. This will continue to go. So one of the things I ask myself in looking at everything that I've been doing is, what do I want to do next? How do I continue to learn? And so in preparing for this conversation, what I did was I thought to myself, how do I, now that I'm working for basically 2 different organizations, how do I find the time, right? When you're traveling and you're living in these different places, it's a bit easier because you don't have the burdens of all of your responsibilities in the day-to-day. But I got a puppy. That dog takes 4.5 hours out of my day just to go for walks. So how do I do it now? And I was a voracious reader. I never really read until college when I became an English major. But now I had to figure out, how do I get that same kind of feeling from reading? And so I started doing audiobooks, very simple. And I'm now listening to lots of podcasts. So I'm not going to put up another question about this, but I just ask you to think about, how are you learning in whatever time frames you can? And to me, I think about learning as, how am I listening? How am I being a good listener to those around me? How am I being in the moment for those around me and actually engaging? What am I reading, right? What are all the different things I'm reading? What am I watching? How am I observing what's going on around me? And then also, how do I do nothing? How do I just let all of that other activity go and just do absolutely nothing? And for me, some of this stuff, and I encourage you guys to share with one another, and if you'd like to shout it out, peace, that's awesome. There are a few things that I've been reading lately that I just find to be wonderful. I'm really enjoying several different news digests. So one is the browser. Every day I get 4 different articles that range from technical stuff to art to music. Another is called the Sync Project, which is really cool. It's all about music and your brain and how you process music in different ways. And that one just brings me so much happy because it talks a lot about how your brain changes because you're listening to music. Another one that I read is called the Exponential Review. And let me define reading here, right? I mean, sometimes I'll open the email that I get and I'll be like, oh, that's interesting. I'm going to go into that article. But some of these are, 50 different articles linked together in a weekly summary. The Exponential Review is by a guy named Azim Azar, and that's mostly AI, nerd tech stuff. I am also, I get something called Brain Pickings, which is written by a woman named Maria Popova, which is very fascinating. She does a lot of a digest of literature, and it takes different philosophical perspectives and synthesizes that in a really nicely concise way to get a 5-10 minute read in there of what she's thinking about. I consume a lot of stuff on Twitter as well. There are some blogs like A Venture Capitalist that I'm pretty interested in. A16Z has terrific podcasts. On Being gives a lot of podcasts about spirituality and meditation. Planet Money, Radio Lab, Revisionist History by Malcolm Gladwell, Invisibilia, Science Versus, all those different NPR types of podcasts, different ways to consume things. I'm an interdisciplinary thinker. I need to be consuming information from lots of different vantage points in order to inform my perspective in any given situation, be that with friends who are struggling with marriage issues or with kid issues or with life issues to a business problem that I'm working on at the time for a specific customer. And so those are some of the things that I am actively doing on a daily basis in order to free associate, in order to grab this random piece of knowledge. Just like, when I was in Africa and I was looking at the kid who was carrying the bowl of water on their head, when am I ever going to use this again? When am I ever going to use that piece of information? But that piece of information has served me so incredibly well because in the end, I'm able to now think about, well, what's the reason why that kid has done that? What are all of the different associative processes that have happened as a result? So in closing, before some questions, what I'd like to do is ask you to ask yourself 4 different questions. How much does learning mean to you? How important is it in your life? What do you love that has absolutely nothing to do with work, and how can you consume more in that area? And then how much interdisciplinary learning do you need to do in order to feel like you'll thrive? I said in the little brief description that I figured out what my purpose was, and that is, without question, to be constantly learning. I will always be curious. So what's your purpose? Questions that you can think about afterwards. Let's go back to this question up here of when you were younger, what did you want to do with your life? So travel, hey, I like that. So these are all things that you can get back to in one way or another. It's up to you to figure out how. It's up to you to figure out when. It's up to you to figure out whether or not that's something that's even important to you anymore. But I think the most important question is, what do you want to do next? What do you want to learn next? And then how can you get there? How can everyone in this room pool their knowledge in order to help you get there? How can I help you get there? Alex has my contact information. Super simple, lilyb@outlook.com. Welcome all the emails, and let me know if you have any questions.
Any quick questions for Lily before we wrap this up? Larry, you have a question?
Have you ever had a problem you couldn't solve?
Every day. So that's kind of a trick question, because can't you just change the problem so that you can solve it? Right? So sometimes not, yeah. Yeah, there are definitely things that I haven't been able to solve. I wasn't able to solve the fact that my mom died. That's a big one. I had 2 moms, technically, one who raised me and one who bore me, and wasn't able to solve the fact that the other one died too. Loss is one of those things that you just learn to deal with. I've learned to deal with on a daily basis and learn from. Grief, wow, that's an emotion you can learn from forever.
I'm curious as to why you changed your mind regarding becoming a COO of a health system.
Yeah. Very simply, I didn't want to become mired in all of the details, and I wanted to work at a faster pace. I wanted to work at a faster pace, and I didn't at that time perceive that I was going to be able to. A variation on that. So when I was leaving Malawi and then India and trying to figure out what I wanted to do next, I kept on asking myself that same question. Oh, how come I don't want to do that? And then it's also, how come I didn't want to stay and become a country director? Right? How come I didn't want to move from Malawi after 5 years to India, to then Saudi, to then wherever else? And ultimately, for me, I'm compelled by the technology. Right? I'm compelled by, and my brain gets going over how that technology and making changes in individual lives are married together. I am absolutely through and through somebody who needs to see and understand all of the upstream and downstream implications of decisions. But I also have to see how that impacts the human. And I didn't think I was going to get to the human part as much as a COO. Perhaps I was wrong. Perhaps it'll change.
Thank you. Any other questions for Lily? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
UTMB Health, working together to work wonders.